Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, cinco, seis. The aim of a research program, my dear Hogan, is not to discover new facts. We already know that the German pilots are superior. Here we are merely furnishing scientific proof. The aim of cheating is not necessarily to win. We already know that we are going to win. Here, we are merely hastening the inevitable. Thing is, over time, words may change, phrases may change, language may change, but ideas, those don't change. Ideas remain constant. This is Chaos Theory, and I'm Arian Archive. Let's get into it. This is, if anything, a response to my own video. A few days ago, on the 2nd, I recorded a an overview of how upset I was with Drop Epos Sennheiser, uh, or the remnants of Sennheiser and Epos, releasing a brand new $200 sound card with specifications that wouldn't seem out of place in 2003. In the same video, I also went over how NVIDIA's RTX 480 graphic card had an apparent price tag of about 1,200 US dollars, somewhere on the wrong side of ludicrous. Now, in addition to that, I praised Intel and AMD for essentially, how can I put this? Deciding to target reasonable prices with reasonable performance, targeting screen spaces that were realistically available. And there's not really a point in targeting a 13K resolution display. There's not that many people that are going to have enough 4K or 8K monitors put together to find a 13K resolution, something that they really need to fill. We're talking a number of consumers that can probably be measured in the tens of thousands, if not the thousands. It's not a large number. However, consumers that have high frame rate 1080p panels, 144 hertz or higher refresh rates, there's lots of those monitors and televisions available in the market. There's a number of QHD, that's 1440 monitors available in the market. And on top of the monitors that are available in the market, you have variations on that. You have ultra wide HD, which is a 1920 by 1080 panel that has a wider horizontal resolution. You have ultra wide QHD, 344 by 1440, I think. I'm not actually looking at a chart, or 2560 by 1440 maybe. It's just you have these different permutations and combinations, and then yes, you have 4K and you have ultra wide 4K, and these are common display points where a common user may have this particular resolution and need to feed that resolution to play the game that they want to enjoy. So targeting a screen space is not really a bad idea, and both AMD and Intel were doing a really good job of getting prices down. And okay, there are market considerations to keep in mind here. First of all, the ongoing component shortage. The United States is short on fabrication facilities. Yes, there are fabrication facilities and construction, but the Democrat Party of the United States is doing its best to slow down, hamper, and prevent the finalization of certification, the purchasing of land, the construction on land of various potential fabrication facilities. This goes hand in hand, incidentally, with the Democrats' war on energy, preventing the installation of refineries, the reopening of refineries, the rehabilitation and refurbishment of refineries. The Democrats have just basically made prices more expensive for everyone, continue to make energy more expensive, continue to make food more expensive, and so on and so forth. I mean, we could literally be here all day detailing everything the Democrats have done to wreck your wallet, but let's try and keep on track. So, in some ways, we get it. Prices until and well, at least in the United States, until the MAGA Republican Party is in control of Congress and can start overriding the presidency, issuing permits for refineries, issuing permits for fabrication facilities, getting the EPA to get out of the way. I mean, seriously, you do not need a 10-year environmental research plan on a fabrication facility's intended lot, because all that's doing is just putting off building that refinery, building that fabrication facility, building that power plant, actually, making energy cheaper, making products cheaper, bringing jobs in. It's really preventing all of that. So until a MAGA Republican Party is in Congress and can actually do something about the government overreaches, the pricing situations are probably not going to change very much. Now, that having been said, acknowledging that we are in an inflationary period, we are in a recession. The Democrats have caused a recession. No particular way of getting around that. That's just stating right out. That's what has happened. We are in a recession. We are in an inflationary period. Prices are going to continue to rise over and above what most people would probably prefer to pay. And again, it comes back to, well, how do we fix that? How does that fix that? And for me, the answer is pretty simple. You start at one end of the problem, which is resource generation. Resource generation being food, energy, actual resources. Doubling down, investing on power infrastructure, investing on manufacturing infrastructure, investing in travel infrastructure, investing in farming infrastructure, investing in agroponics, which I've outlined earlier in previous streams and in text several times before. That's how you would realistically go about fighting inflation. And at that same time, by fighting inflation, lowering prices. Because if you lower the price of, and the example I've given before is that, let's say it cost let's pick on a fabrication facility right now instead of a grocery store, which I normally use. Let's say that it cost Samsung Foundries $10,000 a day to run a fabrication plant. Now, that's probably going to be a little under the actual probable cost of how much a fabrication facility costs to run in terms of power generation. But let's say it costs $10,000 a day. Samsung has to pass that price, that $10,000 a day, on into the final product. Whatever Samsung produces in their fabrication facility has to be paid for by the products that they make. So any product that you buy from Samsung, a function of the price that you pay is a function of Samsung paying the power bill. Now, what if there is enough power available? In this case, we're talking specifically about nuclear power plants to generate the kinds of power that we need and the time space that we need to generate that power. Let's say it only costs Samsung $2 a day to have the same amount of electricity that they were spending $10,000 a day on. What does that do to the price of your product? Well, now that you are not having to pay the power company $10,000, you're now having to pay them $9,998 less. You can now subtract that cost of what it took to run your fabrication facility out of the cost of the product. Thus, a product that has to be adjusted to make a profit on $10,000 a day in power charge can be adjusted where it can make a profit with only $2 a day in power charges. This is pretty simple basic math. You crater the cost of one aspect of what it takes to make a product and what the manufacturer has to incorporate in the cost of the product, you crater the cost of making the product itself. Furthermore, you also crater the cost of everyone downstream of that product, everyone who tries to transport that product, put it in a warehouse, employ people to move that product from one location to another. Even if you put that product on a truck, if you have cratered the energy cost, the cost of electricity, the cost of gas, if you have cratered that by having a greater supply, then the product costs less because you don't have to charge as much to cover the cost of making that product, shipping that product, storing that product, or waiting until somebody buys that product. So, we can then kind of get an idea then where we think graphic cards should probably fall, looking at the monitors that are in wide use, the actual displays that consumers would have or would be using. We can also quasi make some price predictions about, based on historical trends, what the market will bear in terms of what each card should cost. Now, if we include the Biden inflation, the Democrat recession, the difficulty in getting parts manufactured, the difficulty in getting permits, it's probably not unreasonable to consider a 1080p high frame rate graphics card costing somewhere above $250, or at least $250 US. That's probably a little more than most people want to pay. $199 would probably have been the previous desired point, $150 before that. But okay, we're in an inflationary period, and until the infrastructure changes, the pricing is going to be a little higher. We can then move kind of from 250. If we're scaling up, we have an idea of what it may take to go from a 1080p to a 1440. So we're probably thinking maybe around 350, maybe 399 for a 1440 high frame rate graphics card. Now, if we're at about, under 400 for a uh, let's call it mid-range graphics card, then we're probably okay, fine. We're at 500 to 600 for a high-end graphics card, probably topping expected price of 700 for a complete bleeding edge, highest performance graphic card that you can buy, realistically buy. At least that's where it would seem to fall out if we just go based on price trends, how things have gone in the past. But it's not totally indicative of the amount of research and development that goes into making a product. Because come down to it, at some point an engineer has to sit in a chair and they have to do math in their head and have to do math on paper and figure out that they can do this circuit board this way, they can do this circuit board that way, they can get away with this capacitor. There are finite limits on what can be achieved, and it does take time for somebody to sit there. And uh, that does come back to our question of power. Uh, who's paying, or where is the money for the lights being on coming from? Where's the money for that employee's food coming from? Where are they going to sleep at night? And, just other maybe semi-important questions about, well, how do they actually live? You know, can't get a product if your employee can't live to the next day, now can you? All right. So if we kind of take that in mind, again, it's all right, fine. We're accounting for Biden inflation. We're accounting for the difficulties in production. It still seems like going over $700 for a high-end graphic card still feels like it doesn't feel right. It feels like something's it feels like price gouging is what it comes down to. And okay, fine. Some companies do price gouge. Other companies maybe not so much. historically, when you talk about price gouging, most people probably focus on Intel. And it's often been said historically that if it were not for AMD, then Intel would still be happily selling us Pentium 1s in megahertz increments, and we would only have an original Pentium at 400 megahertz today. Okay, fine. That's a little bit of overkill, a little bit of theatrical, making theatrics of Intel's reputation under previous CEOs to not really press the limits of what is possible in performance per watt, performance per price. Intel just has a nasty reputation for overpricing and underperforming. And that was kind of, I think, one of the refreshing glimpses of recent Intel products. Recent Intel products, and we'll kind of, look at Raptor Lake, haven't exactly been overpriced for their performance. Now, granted, that's because their competitors are so strong. They're not just fending off a competitor in the form of AMD. Intel is also having to fend off ARM vendors, RISC vendors, open power vendors, and well, you've got China doing their whole thing with their own processors. What is it, Long Soon? So, kind of got all this going on in the background. And so when the price point on the RTX 480 was kind of leaked, and we're looking at $1,200 for a NVIDIA's high-end graphic card, most consumers probably just rolled their eyes and went, I'm not paying that much. I don't have that kind of money to spend on a luxury item. Now, NVIDIA's argument is people were happily spending this kind of money on graphic cards for the past 3 years. What's your problem? Well, the reason why people were spending that kind of money on graphic cards in the past 3 years, well, past 4 to 5 years, if you really want to be picky about it, is that graphics cards and other components simply weren't available in the retail market. You couldn't go to Newegg and buy yourself an RTX 2000 series or a Radeon 5000 series or even a Radeon 7 or even a Vega graphic card at MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price. The only places you were finding those graphics cards was in secondhand shops, and many of them were decommissioned digital currency mining units. Many of them already near at the end of their thermal electronic lives, and consumers were paying those prices because they didn't have any choice but to pay the prices. If you need a computer and you need a graphics card and you need it now, you pay whatever the market is asking. Even that market is artificially inflated. So NVIDIA's multi-$1,000 graphics cards, those weren't setting a standard or a precedent. That was people buying under protest. And this figures back into market expectations. A number of users who were purchasing those graphics cards and those computer systems and those products were doing so because they absolutely needed that hardware. They needed a working computer then. They couldn't wait another year for supply to iron out. They couldn't wait for China or Russia to run out of energy and slam the lid shut on digital currencies in order to afford the energy resources to just, like heat houses for winter or, provide food, have enough energy for farms to be able to run their equipment. Those are kind of big deals, and not every consumer could really wait until Russia and China had slammed that lid shut and said, we need to focus on our people first. Digital currencies can take a hike. It's killing us, literally. So NVIDIA's keeping the $1,000 plus price point just either demonstrated how out of touch NVIDIA actually is, and there's an argument to say that NVIDIA is completely out of touch from anything resembling rational thought, but that price point just completely ignores how we got to the point where consumers were even paying those prices to begin with. It ignores it's ignored the damage that Democrat policies have inflicted upon nations. It ignores the damage that digital currencies inflict upon nations. It ignores the consumer pushback, and it also ignores that consumers, by and large, changed how they do things. Consumers changed how they went about computing. The Apple iPad made extensive inroads because it's effectively useless as a digital currency calculator. I mean, technically you could, but because Apple had their own API, the, what is it, Metal API, uh, you could not conveniently run a digital currency calculation on Apple products, or at least not natively. So, for a lot of consumers, they found themselves switching to Apple products to do their movie editing, to do their photo editing, to do whatever they needed to do, because A, they could actually get you could purchase an Apple product, and not only could you purchase an Apple product, you could use it. Now, how you might use the Apple product, you would have to learn. Sorry, I kind of got distracted there by what did I just roll over? OS boat part. Uh, you have to learn a new program. You have to learn a new application. It may not do things quite the same as you were used to, but a lot of consumers just they bought what they could buy and just learned to live with it. This also gives us our effective crash in the PC market, where AMD is having problems finding customers. And they're having problems finding customers because, well, when you get straight down to it, the gaming market isn't really that large, or at least the high performance gaming market isn't really that large. Most gamers are probably going to be satisfied with an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5, or at least a computer that can, well, handle running Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 games in a decent enough resolution. And developers, because they're going to be targeting consoles, really don't have that much of an incentive to, well, optimize for a higher spec PCs simply because the market's not really there. Yes, there are bespoke PC titles, and yes, creating higher art assets is probably worth it in the long run for when a console gets an upgrade. Uh, we're already hearing rumors of a PlayStation 5 Pro, and we're also hearing an Xbox Series Z. These systems that will supposedly use RDNA 3 and Zen 4 retain API ABI compatibility with the previous consoles, but enable a higher level of fidelity at and frame rates at more frame rates at lower resolutions, or offer a higher total resolution. Say instead of topping out at 4K, going all the way up to 8K, maybe even possibly beyond 8, with with the fidelity super resolution in play. Is possible that realistically RDNA 3 could power a 16K screen, could render the image in 4K FSR all the way up to 16K, and you'd still get a decent image. We already saw this technique being used on the PlayStation 4 Pro and the checkerboard rendering that was used to, well, offer a higher quality image, even though you were still effectively rendering in lower resolutions overall. So, okay, that's yeah, the concept is already there. Most developers are already leveraging dynamic frame rates and leveraging dynamic resolution and dynamic frame rates, or just have a target frame rate. Uh, and they're also learning to use FSR or variable rate refresh to smooth out the image. And once developers have a handle on that, you can start cheating and get a higher quality image with not as much processing power. So, okay. Anyways, I realize I just tangented far away from original point here, which was specifically to be on the AMD products. Now, in the video that's presently uploading, I I went whole hog on AMD's tendency to have press only products. And this was actually something inherited from ATI. Anytime you saw an ATI product that had XTX on it, you knew it was a press only product. The only way you were ever going to get hands on that card is if you were a hand selected member of the press corps that ATI was counting on giving a favorable review. Now, the XTX products were, for the most part, technology showcases, cherry-picked dies that push the limits of the whatever product to its extreme limits. And okay, XTX products generally did offer higher level performance that did hand ATI a performance crown in some titles of whatever era of gaming that we're talking about. Even so, the XTX branding is still one that leaves a sour taste in many an older gamer's mouth. It's not quite choking back bile, but really close to it. Uh, so the XTX products, and there was a rumor that AMD was going to have another XTX product. Now, given the sour taste in gamers' mouths over the XTX branding in the past, one would kind of hope that AMD would, be looking at a reasonable price point. Again, we kind of already outlined earlier. Price point for an XTX Halo product from AMD, probably we're looking at maybe 700. No, that's not what happened. Rather, after recording the video, AMD officially launched the 7900 XT and the 7900 XTX at price points of $899 and $1,000. Now, this is the point where I'm kind of left scratching my head and going, what? Really? Seriously? Really? Okay, again, going back to, fine, we're in a recession. Prices are going to be higher. Fine. The Democrats are at war against production facilities. You're going to have problems making the part, and you're going to have problems getting the part to your clients. We get that. $900 for the base version and $1,000 for the premium version. And then a tagline I saw from someone was briefed on this product said the 7900 XTX is supposed to go up against the RTX 480. All right, well, if you're talking about a graphics card that has an MSRP that's apparently $1,200, knocking $200 off the price point does sound like quite a bargain. It's still $1,000. It is still too damn expensive. Now, I don't know why the card is that expensive. I don't know what all AMD actually has had to go through to make the card. For all I know, given the current Biden inflation, given the current trade difficulties, given the current antics of the Democrat Party, AMD may barely be making a profit making this graphics card at $1,000. And that's actually kind of scary if the legitimate cost to make the card, to ship the card, to get the card into consumers' hands is so friggin' expensive that it literally costs $1,000 for AMD to make any money off of it. That's a little concerning. That's the kind of thing where you kind of look at rising mega stars like Gary Lake and Blake Masters and go, you've got a plan to deal with this, to knock off the Democrats' attack on infrastructure so that vendors can get these prices down where they can make a profit without having to sell this product for eye-watering levels of, I don't need to spend that kind of money on that product. And that's a very big problem AMD is going to have, especially in a recession. Especially in a recession. Never mind the inflation. Just in a recession alone, when families are spending more for groceries because it costs so much in gas and to get groceries to a store, when it costs so much in power as is, at least in the United States, the power grid is in some states at a breaking point because there are too many electric cars charging at night. The power grid simply can't charge electric cars, run heaters, run refrigerators, run AC, run lights, run infrastructure. There's not enough power. There's not enough electrical power generation there. So something's got to give. What's going to break? So that's where I feel that AMD has positioned themselves into a corner. Yes, they will no doubt sell a few of the 7900 XTX cards, specifically to gamers who have been saving up money expecting that they would need to spend over $1,000 to get a used digital currency graphics card to replace their graphics card when it died. And like it or not, that's just what has been going on the past few years, is that anyone who's been interested in graphics card, who's been interested in improving their gaming or wants a better gaming system, they've probably been socking aside some money, just expecting that they will have to break the bank to get an upgrade, because that upgrade won't be there unless they break the bank. So again, I feel that AMD has made a catastrophic error. I feel that they've really missed what's going on. But on the other hand, I don't know AMD's side of the story. I don't know the manufacturing side. I don't know what terms they are having dictated to them by TSMC. Uh, I do know that Intel is, uh, uh, well, Intel is just stating outright that they would love to manufacture the GPUs for AMD's graphics cards. And at the price points that TSMC apparently is charging to make the chip for the graphic cards, and the prices that memory vendors are charging to buy the memory for the graphics cards, Intel's offer may not sound all that silly in the long run. So, stepping off of AMD for a minute, we'll just wrap this up with the 7900 XT and the 7900 XTX on the surface look like terrible values for money. It's definitely not something that you probably want to spend your money on. But the naming and the price scheming probably suggests that the 7700 XT, which we would have expected to be the mid-range model, the actual $400 to $399 model, may be looking to come in around $599 or $699. And if that's AMD's idea of a mid-range graphics card for QHD resolutions, or low frame rate, say 60 hertz 4K resolutions, not sure that's going to go over very well. And this is an important factor to keep in mind. This is something I went into in the previous video. It's that Halo cards, the higher end cards, don't actually have that much of an effect, if any effect, on the total number of graphics cards sold. And if you look at AMD's bottom line, you look at Intel's bottom line, you look at NVIDIA's bottom line, almost all of the major profits from graphics cards or from graphic products don't come from Halo products. Most of the profits come from the mid-range. They come from the lower end or even integrated products. Again, referencing the previous video that's presently uploading as I'm recording this, Intel technically has the most graphics cards in use today. And the reason Intel has the most graphic cards in use today is simply down to there is an integrated Intel GPU in pretty much every Intel processor across a whole wide range of processors. You pretty much would have to go out of your way to find an Intel processor that does not have an integrated Intel GPU. Likewise, there's an astounding array of Mali graphics processors because the Mali GPU is part of the ARM processor family, and so on and so forth. It's every Apple system for a while had a Power VR graphic processor. Now it has an Apple processor, which is technically derived from Power VR technology, so it's still in some ways a Power VR product, although I believe the litigation is still ongoing, or it may have already been resolved as to whether or not how much of Apple's GPU is a heavily modified Power VR product or not. And yes, I know Power VR is owned by Imagination Tech, and uh, technically I should be saying Imagination Technologies graphics processor rather than Power VR, but whatever. Uh, anyways, so uh, the other thing I wanted to come back to, and I wanted to pick on Intel for a moment, because we really don't know that much about Intel's successor to the ARC GPUs. We do know that Intel is doubling down. They are going to be producing more ARC GPUs. They are going to be targeting higher frame rates, higher performance. Intel is buckled down and has decided that they are in this for Intel has decided that they are going to be into the performance fight. I think I already got that. Shit. Okay, much bigger map than I was expecting. And all right, that shows me where I've been. It's saying there's a propeller back here. Did I already? Or is that what I just got? I think that's what I just got. Distractions. Anyways, so Intel has pretty much decided that they are going to be in the graphics card business for the long haul. And to that end, I just kind of want to ask Intel, take a look at what AMD's doing. Uh, is this a catastrophic mistake trying to price a product so that it's only slightly cheaper than Nvidia's ludicrously priced product? Because this may work. The thing is, this may actually work out for AMD. It may be the starting point of conversation. The kind of thing that gets brought up in a Senate hearing is, why are you selling a graphics card when we can estimate the average selling price of what this probably should cost? Why are you selling it for X amount? And if that question is coming from a sitting senator or a sitting congressman, Dr. Lisa Su could just turn around and say, well, we're having to sell it for that much because the Democrats made it cost that much. Okay, good to know. Good to hear that from somebody who has a handle on all the figures and isn't sitting from the outside. Now, we're probably not going to get that kind of direct question, direct answer. And again, there are just so many different factors in play. And the other thing I don't want to take away from is the Herculean effort that the RDNA team has put into their graphics card. And this is where I kind of need to go back and pick on Intel. Actually, it's not necessarily Intel that I'm picking on for this one. It's specifically Raja. Because I've gone into this before in previous videos, and that Raja on the Edge, Vega was his baby. And we kind of know, although it's never been confirmed internally or by an AMD spokesperson, that Raja was pretty much the reason why Polaris was never allowed to succeed. Polaris couldn't step on the toes of the Vega graphics cards. And when we kind of look at that, we look at the launch of the Z GPUs, the Arc Alchemist GPUs. We can just kind of see Raja's historical work. And again, I've been over this in previous videos. But we also don't know what could have been if Vega had worked as intended. If HBM prices had fallen. If HBM had taken off, prices had come down, and a reworked Vega could have gone into a second or third generation on HBM. Now, again, my theory about why Vega has always sucked in the integrated graphics world is that it was always designed to be used with the high bandwidth memory, and most of the performance gains gotten out of the Vega chips or the Vega dies as used in the integrated APUs, say like the Ryzen 3200U laptop platform. A lot of that performance came from adjusting Vega to better leverage a more standard DDR layout rather than the HBM memory access. So if history had just been slightly bit different, there had been more support for HBM, it hadn't been such a niche product, there had been more time at AMD to work on products that leveraged HBM and made better use of the capabilities that it offered, could the Vega processors have resulted in a competitive gaming monster? I'm not so sure, but that's an alternative history that could have happened. I mean, Raja just could have as easily been thrown under the bus by the market conditions and not an actual technological failure or the inability to design or develop or deploy a product. So that's something we're just looking at Intel now is, yes, the Arc Alchemist GPUs have had a bit of a rough start coming out of the gates. They're probably not as performative as gamers were looking for. They're not exactly in the quantities that gamers were looking for. There's not really that many custom variants in the market, and it still is pretty hard to actually lay hands on one. So looking ahead forwards, again, this is in response to growing economic conditions. The question I would like to pose to Intel is, how could they work with MAGA Republican lawmakers to figure out which laws need or which regulations need to be immediately suspended to get fabrication facilities up and working? Can various federal level oversight be remanded into a state's authority and let the state decide whether or not they want to use their land for a potentially risky business venture? Or does a state wish to use their own land to set aside, we'll let this go forward, we're not going to do a 10-year research project, we're just get it done, get it moving? So that's a conversation I'd really like to see Intel CEO have with, say, Carrie Lake, and like get the two on stage together. What needs to happen what can lawmakers do at a federal level? What can governors do at a state level? What can senators do? What can congressional reps do? What can the MAGA movement do to make it easier for Intel to get cutting-edge fabrication facilities up and moving now? And likewise, the same question kind of posed to Dr. Lisa Su. What can the MAGA movement do to get the government out of the way to increase the available electrical power resources, to increase the energy resources that can help AMD succeed as a product vendor? And if these questions can be asked on camera and with MAGA Republicans giving solid answers on this is their roadmap to fix that, this is the step that will need to be taken, it'll probably be easier to garner the public support required to get these kinds of solutions passed through. greater emphasis on energy construction, greater emphasis on infrastructure construction. Just get it done, get the government out of the way. So that's really all I got. At least that's all I got for as a response to a video that hasn't even finished uploading, because I was just gobsmacked by AMD seriously asking $1,000 for a graphics card. Now, as to the game that you've been just watching me scroll through, Submerged, just for reference, was one of my favorite non-games on the PlayStation 4, and I think I've actually streamed it a few times, used it as a background, because it's just a new breed of chill and explore. Not a whole lot of threat, not a whole lot of puzzle solving, not much to do except just exist. And Submerged just does it very well. Um, so I probably, over the next few videos, just this may be one of the games that just fit into the rotation, where if I just want to talk about something, address a subject, just go off on tangents, this is a pretty good game to do it in. I mean, it's visually stunning. This is just, I'm not even sure when this version actually launched. It was actually kind of a surprise launch to me, because I love the first Submerged, and then there's Submerged Hidden Depths. What? There's a sequel? I love the first game. It's just such a, I know, it's a dour and depressing game in some ways, but it's just achingly beautiful. Without even smacking your, it doesn't pull, to me, it doesn't pull a Xenoblade and just smack you in the face every so often and go, look at how beautiful I am. It's just subtle. But anyways, again, that's all I got. So that's what I've just been rolling through. If you've been going, what is he not playing? And this is Submerged Hidden Depths. I'm Roaring Archive, and I'll catch you later.